Ron DeSantis running for president as a Republican, not doing very well in the polls. Some pretty disturbing numbers out this weekend, actually, about how much he has raised, but more importantly, how much money he is churning through. Also reports that he's shaking up his campaign team, obviously not happy at the work that they're doing and the fact that he still is polling so far behind Donald Trump. But this story about Ron DeSantis really caught my attention, and it's that he is considering Governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds, to be his running mate. So for the last week or so, we've been trying to figure out why Kim Reynolds, who Donald Trump says he helped win her race as governor in Iowa, why she was so cozy with Ron DeSantis, why she wouldn't endorse Donald Trump, who she obviously had a very close relationship with, who was there to support her when she ran for governor. And now we know that the two of them, Kim Reynolds and Ron DeSantis, have been working on her being his running mate. And that's why she can't endorse Donald Trump. And that's why she's so cozy with Ron DeSantis. How did this news, hit you, Chris, when you learned that Kim Reynolds and Ron DeSantis are, working on something together?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I think they're a match made in heaven when you look at that Republican primary. I mean, I think Governor Reynolds just got done signing a 6-week abortion ban in Iowa. So I think, on the record wise, it tracks. And again, for DeSantis, it's a brilliant move, even if she doesn't end up being the pick, to float it out there. It looks like, hey, I'm looking at a woman. You got to think he's looking for some type of positive traction after the last couple of weeks. I think we talked about it on the show, him struggling with the ad that he put out. So he needs something to go right for him at this point. And so I think that's one of the things, let's float it out there. I mean, hey, when Joe Biden was running, he floated out real early that even though it wasn't a name, that he was going to pick a Black woman probably to be the VP pick. And so I think you look at DeSantis and it's another tactical move on his part.
And Chris, what about this news coming out this weekend that DeSantis is just churning, burning through his money at a rate that is not sustainable, and the shakeup of his campaign team. Now, obviously, it's early, so if you're going to change team members, it's better to do it now than to do it a month before the election. But all of this points to the DeSantis campaign that was supposed to be the alternative to Donald Trump. Just every metrics that we look at is coming up as a failure. This is not the guy that was supposed, the guy who was supposed to be the alternative to Donald Trump was supposed to have it together, was going to, really, I thought, come out the gate strong. And we're seeing something totally opposite from DeSantis.
Yeah, I think just with this, DeSantis doesn't really know how to campaign. I mean, I think he got a little bit lucky in the fact that he's running in a state like Florida, but I think you're seeing now where his real internal struggles are. Yes, it's not the end of the world to, change campaign folks early on, but also, no, it's a flag when everybody expected you to be a real contender and you're not that long into your campaign, only a few months, and you're already having a major shakeup. I think it just signals, the kind of turmoil that does exist, and that he is feeling a little bit of the heat of, I got to get something to start sticking. Otherwise, people are going to start looking at the alternatives. They're going to look at a Tim Scott. They're going to look at a Chris Christie and say, look, DeSantis doesn't look like he can get it done. He can't even manage the money we gave him. We're going to hedge our bets with somebody else.
Yeah, I think these red flags at some point, like you said, the donor class in particular starts to say this guy doesn't have what it takes. He's not ready for prime time. He can't go the distance. It's going to be very difficult to convince people that he is an alternative to Donald Trump when he keeps making mistake after mistake after mistake. Let me ask you this, Professor Lawson, jump in. We're talking about potential vice presidents. Donald Trump is floating not only those who are running on the Republican ticket like Tim Scott, but he's also saying maybe Robert Kennedy Jr., who himself is running for president as a Democrat. What is that about?
To be honest, I kind of love it. I kind of love that he's going back to his reality roots and just saying, forget politics. This is really just a circus. There's something that kind of sparks joy in me about the fact that he would go this direction, simply because when we look at Bobby Kennedy and the ways that Bobby Kennedy has had to divorce, well, his family has divorced themselves from him in relation to their longstanding democratic political political dynasty, and the fact that he is kind of the black sheep. He has shown a lot of anti-vax opinions, a lot of opinions that the family has outright had to come out and make statements and say that Bobby Kennedy Jr. does not represent us. There is a place in which it's a representation of what's actually happening with politics when we're looking at Trump. People aren't that concerned about whether Trump is a Republican candidate. They're mostly Trumpites at this point. And so combining with another political dynasty that has this cachet, particularly like this popularity cachet, even if it's coming from this Democratic strain, is a much more representative conversation about what's actually happening in our political sphere today. Because the one thing that I would say about Ron DeSantis' choice is that he's done everything wrong except the fact that he's picked an Iowa Republican, because of the fact that Iowa itself represents this middle of the road, this place where American politics are really divided upon the issues. And the fact that he's picked somebody who has a longstanding history of running as a Republican within Iowa says that he is actually trying to diversify, or at least somebody in his campaign is actually trying to diversify the conversation by picking somebody that does pull in people who are really concerned about Republican issues as opposed to issues that affect the far right. And we have Trump, on the other hand, who is really just running on pageantry and circus. So it is going to be a question of what are Republican values at this point? Are Republican values a question of who is leaning toward the far right, or is it really just who are the Trumpites?
Yeah, and Chris, it seems like the Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump. It's the MAGA party, and I'm not sure there's a lane for Ron DeSantis and this governor from Iowa that would look like a dream team pre-Donald Trump. That would be, a standard Republican ticket where you have a male governor and now a female governor, both who've been fairly successful in their states. That would have looked pretty normal pre-Donald Trump, but Donald Trump enters the equation and they look like outsiders outside of the Republican base, because you can't get to the general unless you can get through the Republican primary.